So, you've decided you want a Mustang. Well, that's only step one of a long and complicated path. For instance, this is the 2020 Ford Mustang Shelby GT500. It's a 760 horsepower culmination of everything Ford has learned through the storied Mustang lineage, dating all the way back to 1965. Even though it's more than 50 years old, there are obvious through lines, such as style, speed, and pure driving fun that carry into the Mustangs of today. Even that Shelby, it's remarkable how far these cars have come.
These days, you don't have to spend big bucks on the latest and greatest Mustang to have fun. We've rounded up 3 great options right here: a 2013 V6, a 2017 EcoBoost, and a 2018 GT.
Hi, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Alana. We're from Edmonds. We've tested and reviewed thousands of cars, on-road and off. Now we're partnering with CarMax, who expertly appraise, buy, and sell hundreds of thousands of cars. We're going to find the right pony car for you.
These models follow the same formula. Deliver an exciting rear-wheel drive experience with a big engine up front and look great doing it. But they go about it in very different ways.
But before we get to that, be sure to check out our written guide via the link below for even more in-depth shopping info, including specs, features, and pricing.
First up is this 2013 Mustang we see here. Remember the retro styling craze of the early 2000s? Well, it lives on through cars like this V6, especially in its blunt front end and aggressive fastback roofline. This V6 was the base engine at the time, which is important because in 2011, Ford upgraded the V6 to both 305 horsepower and an EPA estimate of 30 miles per gallon on the highway, a combination that, while more common today, was difficult to find at the time. CarMax sells Mustangs from this period for an average of $17,300 before taxes and fees, though some vehicles may come in higher or lower than the average, depending on things like mileage or features. Mustangs from this period didn't come with a lot of innovation or groundbreaking features by today's standards. That is, except for sequential taillights. The retro theme continues throughout the cabin. There's an old school steering wheel, classic instrument gauges, and a big wide dashboard. Some of these materials are a little hard and unwelcoming, plus the steering wheel doesn't telescope. You should also know that competitors like the Camaro and Challenger from this era do offer more space for both people and cargo. It's about more than power. Each Mustang drives differently from other models, and the car has impressively placed an emphasis on balance, handling, and comfort in recent years. But the power helps. Power always helps. Let's get going.
This car is more noisy than the other versions that we have here. And that's just going to happen when you don't have acoustic laminated glass or really much sound deadening to speak of. You're balancing all that out by paying less for an older version anyway. The upside is it responds really well to commands, and it is quick. This V6 has a lot of guts to it. We recommend choosing the 6-speed manual instead of the sluggish automatic for extra fun. Overall, this car has really accurate steering and has no trouble handling itself through really tight bends and curves. One thing to keep in mind is it uses the old school rear suspension, and that's just going to make the ride a little bit more bumpy. Ford replaced that with a more modern version in 2015. More on that in a second.
This is a 2017. Ford totally redesigned Mustang in 2015, bringing it into the 21st century with a turbo 4-cylinder engine option, all-new interior, and a modern independent rear suspension for better comfort and handling.
This generation got about an inch lower and wider than the previous design, making it more sporty. It features a more European-style look with swooping lines, dramatic headlights, and an aggressive front fascia. The new 2.3-liter EcoBoost brought a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine with 310 horsepower into the fold. We see Mustangs from this generation selling for an average of $22,800 before taxes and fees, although some vehicles may come in higher or lower than the average depending on things like the mileage, features, and the year. Ford was the last of the pony car makers to transition away from a live rear axle, which links the suspension of both rear wheels. This is great for drag racing and burnouts, but an alternate setup, known as independent rear suspension, or IRS, can be better tuned for comfort and handling agility. Ford's switch from the solid rear axle to IRS for all Mustangs was a big deal for fans when it was announced for 2015. Oh, nerd alert, there were Mustangs with IRS before 2015. The 99 to 04 Cobras used an earlier version of this kind of suspension. In 2015 versions and later, you start to see an interior with lots of similarities to our Shelby. Materials were stepped up a notch, and many of these models feature big dynamic information displays. A rear-view camera, phone connectivity, and voice activation came standard. In 2016, the Mustang added an upgraded infotainment system called Sync 3, which is easier to use and can be continuously updated as new software becomes available. Also, check out these cool aviation-inspired touches. There are toggle switches to select different driving modes and functions, and the speedometer gauge reads ground speed, which is an homage to the P-51 Mustang World War II fighter plane. How cool is that? Maybe it'll soften the blow from the absolutely tiny rear seats. A turbo four-cylinder in a Mustang, is that even allowed? If you're the kind of person who thinks a Mustang should only be a V8 or a V6, I think the EcoBoost might surprise you. So, the first thing you'll notice when you get an EcoBoost Mustang is, woo, boost! Yeah, that's right, it's a turbo car, and it's very quiet and comfortable. I love this seat. This is the best seat. I wish every car had a seat this comfortable. It's easy for me to get in a position where I can reach the gas and the clutch and the shifter and the steering wheel's not in my lap. It's fantastic. Whoever designed this car must have been short. The turbocharged four-cylinder gives you a very different feel in the Mustang than you might be used to if you've only ever been in a V8 or a V6 one. It's not as rowdy as those engines, but it works really well with the redesigned chassis and suspension to give you a comfortable, confident ride. This car feels great on curvy roads, and you will never find yourself suffering from slow caritis if you need to pass somebody on the freeway. The Mustang has always sort of been the handling muscle car. You know, it's the one that can go fast in a straight line, but can also go neatly around corners. And Ford really stepped it up for this generation. The new chassis and suspension give it a confidence that make it fantastic to drive on mountain roads, freeway on-ramps and off-ramps, anywhere that's twisty. You know, the fun stuff.
Now we come to this, the GT. Ford tweaked the styling in 2018, which is this Mustang's model year, adding sharper, more aggressive lines and angles. You can see a version of this on our new GT500, and we expect it to be around for a few more years at least. This one has the big V8, a 5.0 liter, as many famous Mustangs throughout history have had, upgraded to a whopping 460 horsepower. It was this year that Mustang started to offer a 10-speed automatic transmission too, instead of the old 6-speed. This most recent version of the Mustang sells for an average of $25,220 before taxes and fees, though some vehicles may come in higher or lower than the average, depending on things like mileage, features, and model year. What's the first thing you think of when it comes to Mustangs? Probably not driver assistance aids. By 2018, automatic emergency braking and lane keep alerts were pretty common in most cars, but the Mustang never had them until that year's refresh. Now your pony car could come with the same technology as family sedans and crossovers. There are also parking sensors, pedestrian detection. The arrival of these features brought the Mustang up to date with more everyday usable cars. With the 2018 refresh came a few changes that you mostly can't see. For instance, an upgraded system called Sync Connect made its debut, allowing drivers to start, locate, and lock or unlock their car remotely. Other new features included an available Wi-Fi hotspot, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility, and acoustic laminated glass for a quieter ride. There's also a 12-inch info cluster and, at night, changing colors to the ambient lighting. Ooh, ah.
That EcoBoost is impressive, but at least in Mustang land, there's still no replacement for displacement.
Yeah. Now we're in the Big Daddy, the 5-liter V8 engine with 460 horsepower. One other change that Ford made in 2018 was introducing a 10-speed automatic transmission to replace the 6-speed. Now that gives you faster gear changes, which comes in really handy in a situation like this. We have noticed some issues with the 10-speed automatic in the past. Sometimes when you downshift because you want to accelerate, the shifts can be a little bit slow, and also regular gear changes are a little bit jerky sometimes. Right now though, this car feels right at home on the track. In general, this is a welcome upgrade in terms of everyday drivability. The retuned suspension feels comfortable for a muscle car, and there's an optional adaptive suspension as well. Acoustic laminated glass comes standard, and that helps keep the outside noise outside. Driving a Mustang is getting easier and more pleasant, without losing any of the gut-punching acceleration you expect. Really, the only way to improve it is buy a Shelby.
The Mustang is a car you want, not a car you need. Okay, depending on your definition of need. For that reason, it's worth spending some time to get exactly the right model for you, whether that's a rumbling V8 or a comfortable cruiser, old school retro style or the new modern high-tech pony.
The Mustang's strength lies in everyday usability combined with muscle that makes your hair stand on end, all at an affordable price. In 55 years, that hasn't changed. But these models show that Ford is improving its iconic coupe all the time, and it keeps the Mustang legend alive and well.
For more expert used car advice, be sure to subscribe. And remember to click the link below for an in-depth article on used Mustangs.